People gathered around the Eiffel Tower, looking up in terror. To test a flying costume, a mannequin was supposed to be thrown down from the tower, but the figure falling from a height of 60 meters was a human being. It was Franz Karl Reichelt, the mastermind behind the invention. Already mid-air, he realized something was wrong with his contraption. But today, I'm presenting the 9 worst cases of an invention killing its creator. Keep watching to find out if Franz is on this list. I assure you that each new story is crazier than the previous one. As always, viewer discretion is advised. In 1973, Henry Smolinski and his friend, Hal Blake, presented a sensational invention called AV Mizar, a flying car. The men literally sawed apart a small Cessna airplane and a Ford Pinto car, and then they glued the 2 vehicles together. They took off Cessna's front engine as well as its cockpit, put the wings over the roof, and pushed the plane's second engine close to the car's body. Henry and Hal set up the vehicle in a way that allowed the automobile's steering wheel to control both the car and the plane's wings. The flying car could accelerate up to 209 kilometers per hour, reach an altitude of almost 3,700 meters, and cover the distance of 1,600 meters. This almost futuristic vehicle was supposed to cost $15,000, but first, it had to be tested. During the first test, flight steering issues forced the pilot, Charles "Red" Janus, to land the Mizar in the middle of a bean field. Yet even this failed demonstration was a sensation in the US, as the car did manage to fly. And for the time being, it was enough. The inventors received 34 pre-orders for Mizars. So Henry and Hal rushed to try and fix past errors, creating another prototype with a more reliable aviation engine. As early as September 11th, Smolinski and Blake decided to raise the car into the air by themselves. However, 2 minutes after the takeoff, the flying car's right wing started falling off, and the Mizar started swirling and disintegrating mid-air. The plane-mobile fell from an altitude of around 120 meters, crashed, and caught fire. When the burning Mizar was extinguished, the inventors' dead bodies were found in the vehicle scraps. An investigation revealed that in this particular model, the right wing strut support was held in place by a bad weld. The entire structure had some loose parts as well, and the car's weight turned out too heavy for the airplane's wings. All of these factors resulted in a crash. Any testing of new flying vehicles is always extremely risky. Yet a man called Mike Hughes never feared danger. He was a professional stuntman who bore the nicknames Mad and Daredevil. Mike was a stuntman professionally, but gravitated toward inventions for his entire life. That's why he created self-built steam rockets and took to the sky in them. He wanted to perfect his flights to such an extent that one day he'd reach the Kármán line, the borderline between the Earth's atmosphere and outer space, and see our planet from above with his own eyes. On February 22, 2020, he hopped into a self-built rocket for the 3rd time in the desert near Barstow, California. That day, Hughes had planned to reach an altitude of 1,525 meters. All this was being filmed for a TV series called Homemade Astronauts, developed by the Science Channel. A group of around 50 spectators expecting a breathtaking show gathered nearby. However, during takeoff, the rocket touched a ladder placed beside it. This caused one of the parachutes to detach. The rocket had a curve of a flight, vanished into the sky for a moment, and then started falling. It hit the sand at the speed of 805 kilometers per hour, and Mike died instantly. Yet unlike today's inventors, the vehicle enthusiasts of the past built veritable machines of death without even realizing it. In the early 20th century, an Irish businessman and shipbuilder, Thomas Andrews, was the first person to design a colossal ocean liner with 2 enormous 4-cylinder steam engines and a giant steam turbine. Yes, it's the Titanic we're talking about. The vessel was a remarkable highlight of the art of engineering. However, you all know what happened to her in the end. During the Titanic's first and only sailing, Andrews was on board as well. When on April 14, 1912, at 11:40 p.m., the ship hit an iceberg with its starboard side. Andrews spent his last hours helping the crew to get the passengers into the safety boats, and then drowned aboard his invention. This is far from being the only horrible story of an inventor putting their trust in their invention, although they shouldn't have. On July 31, 1918, Francis Stanley was proudly heading south from a small town near Topsfield, Massachusetts, on a steam engine car he'd invented with his twin brother, Freeland. It all started when they wanted to find an alternative for the internal explosion engine, which is what Francis used to jokingly call the unpredictable internal combustion engine. So, in 1897, the Stanley brothers built the first steam engine for a car. It burned gasoline to heat a water-filled cauldron. The cauldron then transmitted the energy directly to the rear axle, making the car more powerful and effective than the other vehicles of the time. In 1898, the brothers participated in a race and a safety test. The public was shocked at how quiet the steam engine car was compared to the other vehicles. In today's money, it would cost around $49,000. Yet, it was worth it. Steam cars didn't break as often and were more powerful and fast. However, the latter played a deadly role in the life of its inventor. That day, when Stanley was passing near Topsfield, he accelerated to a mad speed when, suddenly, a farmer's cart appeared on the road near him. According to one of the event's accounts, the man tried to dodge the obstacle but failed to maneuver at such a speed. He turned the wheel to the side and got off the road. There, he crashed into a pile of lumber and turned over. The inventor died of injuries in the hospital. Eventually, steam engine cars were pushed off the market by Ford's Model T and other cheaper cars with internal combustion engines. The Francis Stanley incident was just an accident, but some inventors tinkered with such dangerous stuff that it left them no chance of survival. On May 17, 1930, Max Valier was trying out the first liquid fuel engine for a rocket. He was so excited about the technology and the potential of sending humans to space that he was constantly looking for ways to seize the public's interest and attract investors to his experiments. So, he attached rockets to railway cars, sleds, gliders, and racing cars for public display. However, Valier was trying to invent something more robust than a gunpowder-powered rocket. So, one day, for the nth time, Max was sitting in his lab and experimenting with a combustion chamber. Yet unlike the labs we have today, his was just an ordinary room with a table and a chair, with no protective structures for safe work whatsoever. The combustion chamber consisted of a steel pipe with an exhaust valve on one end, and an intake valve injecting the fuel into the engine on the other. First, Valier gradually supplied liquid oxygen into the chamber through small openings. Then, he opened one of the valves to allow the fuel and the oxygen to get mixed in the combustion chamber. After they meshed together, Max set them on fire with a soldering lamp, and the flame went up with a roar. The experiment was complicated by the fact that the pressure and the chemicals reaction intensified each time the valve was opened a bit wider. So the process had to be controlled to avoid injuries. Not to mention that Valier wasn't wearing any protective goggles or fire-resistant clothes. The flame reached up to a few centimeters from his face. Suddenly, something went wrong, and the chamber exploded. Valier was thrown back by the blast and fell to the floor. When his assistants ran up to him, they saw a fragment of the contraption in his chest. It had fractured his pulmonary artery. Valier died within 10 minutes. He was only 35 years old at the time. The inventors I've told you about risked their own lives to try and improve other people's lives. However, some engineers designed different contraptions just for the danger and the thrill of it. On January 19, 1985, a Czech professional stuntman, Karel Souček, gathered a large team to set up and film his next trick. He was one of Canada's most popular stunt professionals. His most well-known performance was a jump into the Niagara whirlpool in a special steel barrel. This time, he was going to jump in this barrel from a height of 55 meters off the top of Houston Astrodome into a 3-meter deep water reservoir. The stuntman trusted his barrel, as he was the one who designed it. The contraption was 2.7 meters long and had a diameter of 1.5 meters. On the inside, the barrel had a styrofoam lining. Karel spent $45,000 to build and film his barrel, and $500 in fines for doing the stunt without a license. So, he was locked in the barrel just under the Astrodome ceiling. Yet, the show had barely started when everything went awry. The barrel got released prematurely and started swirling around instead of falling in a straight line. This caused it to miss the water reservoir, hitting its edge. We can't see the stuntman himself in the video, but I can model what must have been happening on the inside at that moment. The impact crushed Soucek's ribcage and abdomen and broke his skull. The stuntman died in the hospital on the following day. Free-falling tricks are considered to be among the most dangerous ones. Yet sometimes, even a reliable flying structure can't fully ensure that a jump from a height won't have a fatal end, especially if the contraption is being tested for the first time. On August 9, 1896, Otto Lilienthal was going to perform another glider flight. He was the first person to successfully go on many flights on this invention. To this day, Otto is called the most prominent aviation experimenter. He was a skilled aeronautics engineer and studied the mechanics and aerodynamics of bird flight. Otto got enthusiastic about creating wings for humans too. In 5 years, he went on 2,000 flights on 16 different glider models, biplanes, as well as wing-flapping aircraft. But his original monoplane, which he called the Normales La Parade, yielded the best results. Yet, all of Otto's inventions had one major flaw. They had no steering mechanisms whatsoever. To influence the glider's direction and stability, the pilot had to lean this or that way, exerting significant effort. So, on August 9, 1896, Otto was standing on top of an artificial hill he'd built near his house, not far from Berlin. Normally, he managed to fly for approximately 250 meters, and the flight continued for around 12 to 15 seconds. This time, however, the man had been planning to achieve an even better result. Otto ran and jumped off the hill. He gained altitude quickly, yet within seconds, a strong gust of wind overturned the glider, causing a rapid fall. No matter how much Otto tried to shift the weight, the contraption was out of control. The inventor fell from a height of 15 meters. He sustained a severe neck fracture. The doctors fought for his life fiercely, but Otto died on the following day. They say that his last words were, "Sacrifices must be made." This same phrase also captures the intentions of Franz Karl Reichelt. No matter the cost, he wanted to invent a suit for aviators that could instantly turn into a parachute, saving lives in a plane crash. That's why he got the nickname the Flying Tailor. On February 4, 1912, he was supposed to do another jump in one of his self-designed contraptions. In the early stages, his creation had success. Using mannequins for tests, he managed to push them off the 5th floor of the building he lived in, and they landed in one piece. The final design of his suit was a combination of silk and rods. Despite the suit's unwieldy appearance, Reichelt was sure it was fully functional. To draw more attention to his invention, the man was going to turn the presentation into a real show. That's why he decided to throw a mannequin in the suit off of the Eiffel Tower. The Paris authorities agreed to this. However, just before the start of the show, Franz himself appeared wearing the costume on the tower. The inventor broke the rules since he was sure his flying suit would work and was willing to bet his own life on his success. On the frosty morning of February 4th, in front of a large crowd, Franz stepped off the Eiffel Tower and the costume didn't open quite as the inventor had planned. Franz fell from a height of 60 meters. He didn't survive, of course. However, if Franz only hurt himself, there's a person whose inventions endangered the entire planet. Thomas Midgley Jr. was slowly dying in bed. All his inventions involved poisonous chemicals that were slowly killing his body. And not only his, Thomas wanted to make cars more comfortable. For example, one of his goals was to reduce the engine noise that arose due to uneven fuel combustion. That's why in the early 20s, Midgley suggested adding tetraethyl lead, a toxic chemical, to gasoline. He already figured he'd make $200 million off his invention. A mass poisoning caused by this chemical in 1924 didn't take long to arrive. People started having increasingly more hallucinations, and the number of worker deaths at the plants working with tetraethyl lead was suspiciously high. During the next 60 years, gasoline with tetraethyl lead spread all over the world, causing central nervous system damage and even decreased IQ levels. Still, the inventor wanted more money and kept looking for a new gold mine. Then, he found that a harmful chemical called dichlorodifluoromethane can be used as a refrigerant in fridges and air conditioners. The compound started commercial production as Freon 12. To demonstrate Freon's safety, Midgley inhaled a mouthful of the gas and blew out a candle flame. Yet chlorofluorocarbons emitted by broken fridges have caused serious and irreparable damage to the ozone layer. This means that, to this day, we are still suffering from the repercussions of Thomas Midgley's deadly inventions. However, ironically, it wasn't tetraethyl lead or freon that killed him. It was another invention that looked perfectly safe at first glance. At the age of 51, Midgley fell ill with poliomyelitis. This disease attacks the nervous system, causing total paralysis within hours. It left Thomas disabled, and then he designed his last invention, a system of pulleys and ropes that helped get him out of bed without assistance from other people. One day, he wanted to get up with the help of his invention when suddenly, one of the ropes caught his neck. Midgley felt a pang of sharp pain, followed by heaviness in the chest. He was trying to breathe in the air, but never made another inhale. In the end, Thomas Midgley was strangled by his own invention, the very same one that was supposed to save lives instead of taking them. Today, humanity has safe mechanisms that allow patients to leave their beds, as well as electric cars that don't use gasoline at all, and wingsuits that look like wings and give humans the gift of flying like birds. Hold on a minute though. I can't say that the latter is a completely safe invention. Tell me in the comments which modern inventions are just as dangerous as the ones I've told you about today.